Hello and welcome to CVR News Network. You're watching CVR English and these are the details of World 360 and I'm Sandeep. President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday that he would pause tariffs on most nations for 90 days, demonstrating his flexibility in addressing economic challenges. This unexpected move sent shockwaves through global markets, which surged following the announcement. However, he also raised the tax rate on Chinese imports to 125%, a decision likely aimed at exerting further pressure on China in the ongoing trade war. Trump emphasized that this pause would provide both US and other nations with an opportunity to renegotiate terms. Markets reacted positively, with stock indices posting significant gains. Many analysts viewed this as an unexpected shift in strategy. Trump reiterated his position that tariffs would remain a tool of leverage. The pause, however, raised questions about the long-term impact on trade relations.
I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable. Charles Schwab was here a little while ago, one of the great financial people, and he said he's been waiting for 40 years for somebody to do what I did over the last month, and if you didn't do it, you wouldn't have a country. It wouldn't be sustainable. So I'm honored to have done it. And look, nothing's over yet, but we have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. It's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people.
On Monday, you said no pause. Today there is a pause. So how can people believe your word today?
It's not a question of that. You have to have flexibility. I could say, here's a wall, and I'm going to go through that wall. I'm going to go through it no matter what, and keep going, and you can't go through the wall. Sometimes you have to be able to go under the wall, around the wall, or over the wall. So I consider, I think in financial markets, because they change. Look how much it changed today. We went from, pretty moderate today, but over the last few days it looked pretty glum, to, I guess they say it was the biggest day in financial history. That's a pretty big change. And I think the word would be flexible. Yeah.
Why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable. Charles Schwab was here a little while ago, one of the great financial people, and he said he's been waiting for 40 years for somebody to do what I did over the last month.
Amid growing concerns over a global market meltdown, President Trump decided to pause tariffs on most nations for 90 days. This sudden shift aimed to ease the strain caused by the ongoing trade war, signaling a move away from broader global conflict. Despite this, Trump simultaneously decided to increase the tariffs on Chinese exports, raising the tax rate to a staggering 125%. This action effectively narrowed the focus of a trade conflict between US and China. The S&P 500 saw a sharp rise, climbing 9.5% as investors responded positively to the news.
Discussion.
Sitting here under discussion. So did you know that this was under discussion, and why did you not include that as part of your opening remarks?
So typically what I don't do is divulge the contents of my discussions.
What are the details of the pause?
Well, my understanding is that because so many countries have decided not to retaliate, we're going to have about 90 days.
No, excuse me? China increased their tariffs on the United States. Trump blinked.
What's the blink, sir?
What are the details? How long is the pause? How many days? How many weeks?
I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've
So
been in
the
this
trade
hearing.
representative hasn't spoken to the president of the United States about a global reordering of trade
Yes, I have.
And
I've just
yet
been in the hearing with you, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet? WTF? Who's in charge?
The President of the United States is in charge.
And what do you know about those details?
Well, as I mentioned,
It looks like your boss just pulled the rug out from under you and paused the tariffs, the taxes on the American people. There's no strategy. You just found out 3 seconds ago, sitting here, we saw you. How are you in charge of negotiation if the president is tweeting about this from wherever the hell he is?
the president was elected and he runs the trade policy, and I advise him and execute his
Who
trade
executes the
policy.
trade policy?
I execute the trade
Did you
policy.
know
Mr.
that
President.
this was happening?
We have been discussing all. I am, yes.
When were you made aware of that?
Well, I understood the decision was made a few minutes ago. It's something
Sitting
that's
here-
been under discussion.
Sitting here under discussion. So did you know that this was under discussion, and why ordering of trade?
Yes, I have. I've
And
just
yet
been in the hearing with you, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet? WTF? Who's in charge?
The President of the United States is in charge.
And what do you
Elected.
know about those details?
Well, as I mentioned,
It looks like your boss just pulled the rug out from under you and paused the tariffs, the taxes on the American people. There's no strategy. You just found out 3 seconds ago, sitting here, we saw you. How are you in charge of negotiation if the president is tweeting about this from wherever the hell he is?
the president was elected and he runs the trade policy, and I advise him and execute his
Who
trade
executes
policy.
the trade policy?
I execute the trade
Did you
policy.
know
Mr.
that
President.
this was happening?
We have been discussing.
The death toll from the tragic collapse of the nightclub in Dominican Republic has reached 194, according to an official statement by Juan Manuel Mendez, the Director of Center of Emergency Operations. Mendez confirmed that the recovery operation is ongoing, with authorities utilizing the forensic teams from the National Institute of Forensic Science, INACIF, to identify the deceased. The incident, which has shocked the nation, occurred during a busy night, trapping many inside the building. Emergency response teams have been working tirelessly through the scale of the disaster has overwhelmed local resources. Witnesses described hearing loud cracking sounds before the building came down. The government has promised to provide support for the families of those affected by the collapse. International aid may also be offered to assist in the recovery process. Authorities are investigating the cause of the collapse, though it remains unclear whether foul play was involved. In the wake of this tragedy, national and international support has poured in to help the victims and families.
Sí, pero no, yo creo que con esa no. Llámala. Tu cámara hace como.
Ahí mismo.
Sí, pero no, yo creo que con esa no. Llámala. Tu cámara hace como.
Ahí mismo.
Ya la 11 lo hacen
Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto confirmed on Wednesday that Indonesia would offer temporary shelter to Palestinian medical evacuees and orphan children as a result of the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Subianto stated that Indonesia would provide sanctuary to around 1,000 evacuees in the first batch, prioritizing those in urgent need of medical treatment. These evacuees would be housed until they are well enough to return to Gaza, provided the situation there becomes safe again. The move is part of Indonesia's broader humanitarian response to the Israel-Hamas war, which has displaced thousands. President Subianto made it clear that this was not a permanent resettlement offer, but rather a temporary measure to provide the relief. Indonesian officials are working with international organizations to ensure that the evacuees receive adequate care during their stay, and this response also underscores Indonesia's continuous support for Palestine in the ongoing Middle East conflict.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam. Kami siap mengevakuasi mereka yang luka-luka, mereka yang kena trauma, anak-anak yatim piatu, siapapun yang oleh pemerintah Palestina dan pihak-pihak yang terkait di situ, mereka ingin dievakuasi ke Indonesia, kami siap akan kirim pesawat-pesawat untuk mengangkut mereka. Kita memperkirakan mungkin jumlahnya sekitar 1.000 untuk gelombang pertama. Syaratnya adalah semua pihak harus menyetujui hal ini. Kedua, mereka di sini hanya sementara sampai mereka pulih sehat kembali, dan pada saat mereka pulih sehat kembali, kondisi di Gaza sudah memungkinkan, mereka harus kembali ke daerah mereka asal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam, saudara. Kami siap mengevakuasi mereka yang luka-luka, mereka yang kena trauma, anak-anak yatim piatu, siapapun yang oleh pemerintah Palestina dan pihak-pihak yang terkait di situ, mereka ingin dievakuasi ke Indonesia, kami siap akan kirim pesawat-pesawat untuk mengangkut mereka. Kita memperkirakan mungkin jumlahnya sekitar 1.000 untuk gelombang pertama. Syaratnya adalah semua pihak harus menyetujui hal ini. Kedua, mereka di sini hanya sementara sampai mereka pulih sehat kembali, dan pada saat mereka pulih sehat kembali, kondisi di Gaza sudah memungkinkan, mereka harus kembali ke daerah mereka asal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam, saudara. Kami siap mengevakuasi mereka yang luka-luka, mereka yang kena trauma, anak-anak yatim piatu, siapapun yang oleh pemerintah Palestina dan pihak-pihak yang terkait di situ, mereka ingin dievakuasi ke Indonesia, kami siap akan kirim pesawat-pesawat untuk mengangkut mereka. Kita memperkirakan mungkin jumlahnya sekitar 1.000 untuk gelombang pertama. Syaratnya adalah semua pihak harus menyetujui hal ini. Kedua, mereka di sini hanya sementara sampai mereka pulih sehat kembali, dan pada saat mereka pulih sehat kembali, kondisi di Gaza sudah memungkinkan, mereka harus kembali ke daerah mereka asal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam, saudara. Kami siap mengevakuasi mereka yang luka-luka, mereka yang kena trauma, anak-anak yatim piatu, siapapun yang oleh pemerintah Palestina dan pihak-pihak yang terkait di situ, mereka ingin dievakuasi ke Indonesia, kami siap akan kirim pesawat-pesawat untuk mengangkut mereka. Kita memperkirakan mungkin jumlahnya sekitar 1.000 untuk gelombang pertama. Syaratnya adalah semua pihak harus menyetujui hal ini. Kedua, mereka di sini hanya sementara sampai mereka pulih sehat kembali, dan pada saat mereka pulih sehat kembali, kondisi di Gaza sudah memungkinkan, mereka harus kembali ke daerah mereka asal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam, saudara. Kami siap mengevakuasi mereka yang luka-luka, mereka yang kena trauma, anak-anak yatim piatu, siapapun yang oleh pemerintah Palestina dan pihak-pihak yang terkait di situ, mereka ingin
Tariff, leader of Canada's opposition party, criticized President Trump's decision to pause tariffs on most countries while leaving Canada unaffected by the freeze. Poilievre expressed his frustration, particularly because Canada remains subject to a 25% tariff on fentanyl-related goods unless it complies with US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement rules of origin. Poilievre, who is campaigning to become Canada's next Prime Minister, declared what he referred to as Trump's disrespect towards Canada. The opposition leader argued that this move showed a lack of consideration for Canada's economy and trade relations. During a campaign stop in Brampton, Ontario, Poilievre called for a more balanced approach to the trade with the US. He suggested that Trump's tariff policies would harm Canadian business and consumers. The issue of tariff continues to be a significant point of contention between the two countries. Poilievre's remarks have resonated with many Canadians who are concerned about the economic impact of the ongoing trade war. His position on this matter will likely to be a key issue in the upcoming elections.
I have to address today's latest disrespect by President Trump of our country. While President Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariffs for dozens of countries, he kept those tariffs in place on Canada. Take that in for a moment. Almost every country in the world got a pause on American tariffs, but not us, America's best friend. Our steel workers, aluminum workers, auto workers, lumber workers hit again. This after Prime Minister Carney boasted that he had a, quote, productive phone call with the president. He said that he had made progress with the president. What progress? What progress do the auto workers in Brampton and Windsor and elsewhere in Canada today see? Now, to be clear, I'm not blaming Prime Minister Carney for President Trump's tariffs. These tariffs are uncalled for and unjustified, and no one can control this president. But that's precisely the point. Prime Minister Carney is running his entire campaign on a false promise that he can control the president through magical, masterful negotiating techniques. Well, we know now that that is not true. Nobody can control this president. And while I will move quickly to negotiate an end to tariffs with protections for Canadian sovereignty as quickly as possible, we need to focus on what we can control. And this is what we can control, my friends. We need to reverse the disastrous liberal economic policies of the last 10 years that made us so dependent on the Americans in the first place.
Ukraine's government demanded an explanation from Beijing on Wednesday after President Zelensky claimed that Chinese nationals has been taken prisoner while fighting alongside Russian forces in Ukraine. Zelensky's office expanded on the claim, starting that significant number of Chinese citizens has been recruited as mercenaries by Russia. According to Ukrainian intelligence, these individuals were allegedly recruited through social media platforms where they were promised financial compensation. The Ukrainian government emphasized that the Chinese nationals captured were not directly involved in official military operations. These developments has raised alarms about China's possible indirect involvement in the conflict. While China has repeatedly stated its neutral stance, The presence of these Chinese nationals on the front lines complicates this position. Ukrainian authorities have vowed to investigate further and gather additional evidence of China's potential role.
中国政府始终要求本国公民远离武装冲突区域，避免以任何形式卷入武装冲突，尤其应避免参加任何一方的军事行动。这种说法毫无根据。中方在乌克兰危机问题上的立场是清晰的、明确的，得到国际社会的广泛认可。乌方应正确看待中方为政治解决乌克兰危机问题所做的努力和发挥的建设性作用。
Китай. Вони в Києві спілкуються зі слідчими, дають інформацію про те, як опинились на фронті, як стали учасниками цього міжнародного злочину, цієї російської війни проти України. Дипломатичними каналами ми доведемо необхідну інформацію до китайської сторони. І, звісно, до кожного у світі, хто чув, як в Пекіні говорили, що не можна розпалювати цю війну ще більше і розширювати її масштаб. Залучення ще й громадян Китаю у цю війну – це точно розпалення більшої.
中国政府始终要求本国公民远离武装冲突区域，避免以任何形式卷入武装冲突，尤其应避免参加任何一方的军事行动。这种说法毫无根据。中方在乌克兰危机问题上的立场是清晰的、明确的，得到国际社会的广泛认可。乌方应正确看待中方为政治解决乌克兰危机问题所做的努力和发挥的建设性作用。
Jennifer Vasquez, the wife of Kilmer Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran man wrongfully deported by the U.S. government, vowed to fight for his release. She held an emotional press conference on Wednesday condemning the U.S. government actions, which she described as kidnapping. Vasquez-Sura was joined by U.S. Representative Adriano Espeland and Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, both of whom expressed solidarity with the family. The Supreme Court of the United States temporarily halted an order requiring the immediate return of Garcia, who had been deported by mistake. Garcia's deportation was sparked outrage, especially given the U.S. government's acknowledgement that the move was a legal error. The cause has become a symbol of struggles faced by immigrant families under the Trump's administration policies. Vasquez-Sura vowed to continue her fight, stressing that her husband's wrongful deportation was a violation of his rights. The broader implications of this case could impact the future immigration policies and decisions.
Kilmer, if you can hear me, I'm still fighting for you. Your brother, your mother, our children are still fighting for you. We're not going to give up hope to the Supreme Court justice. Do the right thing. History will always remember you. To everyone at home who can still hear my voice and are fighting for the return of their loved ones, keep fighting for Kilmer and all the Kilmers out there. My husband Kilmer was abducted and disappeared by the Trump administration. It's been 28 days since I lost my husband.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visited Panama on Tuesday, where he addressed the ongoing security threats to the Panama Canal, particularly from China. Hegseth reaffirmed that U.S. commitment to maintaining the security of the canal as essential global trade route. He met with Panama's President Jose Raul Molino and participated in the ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new U.S.-financed dock at the Vasco Nunez de Balboa Naval Base.
A todos por acompañarnos. Les pedimos al presidente de la República y se mantiene en equipo de Estados Unidos y el
El señor secretario Hegseth, en la reunión que tuvieron en privado, reconoció la soberanía de Panamá sobre el canal de Panamá y reconoció que hay que respetar el Tratado de Neutralidad y la Constitución Política de nuestro país, al igual que nosotros respetamos la Constitución y las leyes de los Estados Unidos a la hora de entrar en algún tipo de negociación.
Buen día. We certainly understand that the Panama Canal is in Panama.
And that's the end of the World 360. Stay tuned to CVR News English.